You can't see me yet.
Hi, I'm Charles Stella. I'm a composer and producer in Los Angeles, and I'm really excited to share with you today a brand new plugin from Unfiltered Audio called
Dent 2. Really put a dent in that audio.
Bro, what are you doing, man?
Just trying to do a good job. Dent 2.
You can't see me.
Hey guys, my name is Logan James. I'm a singer, songwriter, producer, among other things. And me and Charles, we actually do a lot of music together, whether that's for our current album that we're working on, shameless plug, or for music for TV and film. So one of my favorite things to do after I cut vocals is to mess with them with special effects. Charles hit me up and was like, dude, you gotta check out this plugin. So Charles, tell me about the plugin.
This is Dent 2, which is an update to Dent from Unfiltered Audio, and it's an amazing Swiss Army knife of all things distortion and destruction. It also has, it's a tweaker's paradise. I mean, you could modulate the modulators with this thing.
Modulate the modulator.
It's really amazing. So I think you're going to love it on your vocals and also on the instruments on this track. So let's get to the screencast and I'll show you what it can do.
Screencast.
Okay, so here is Dent 2 and Indent 2. So Dent 2 is an amazingly versatile distortion unit that blends many analog and digital techniques with a state-of-the-art modulation system for nearly limitless possibilities. Here's the session of the song you heard in the intro. I have multiple instances of Dent 2 and its little brother Indent 2 throughout. Indent 2 is basically a slightly stripped-down version of Dent 2, and I'll cover the differences a little later. But before we get to the various examples, let's take a look at what's new. If you're familiar with the previous versions, you'll notice they look almost identical. Most of the changes are under the hood, so to speak, but they're quite extensive nonetheless. Okay, so first you have new distortion algorithms. You have harsh fold, distortion, tube, tape, glauby, that sounds like Korean barbecue, and cubic. You also have the new complex mode that allows you to apply different distortion algorithms to each of the three clipping stages. You also have automatic gain compensation and a new multi-mode filter here. So where previously you only had a low-pass filter, now you have three other types. I really like this one. Really opens up the sounds that you can get from this unit. You also have the ability up here in the system preferences to go from no oversampling to 2 times or 4 times oversampling. And you also have the ability to change the size from 200%, 175. Previously, you could only make the UI either 100% or 200%, so you have a couple other options now. You also have this new amazing step sequencer as one of your modulator options down here. You also have phase control for the LFOs, very cool. And you also have the ability to trigger the start phase of the LFO as well, also very cool. It also now interfaces with Roly Lightpad. I don't have one, but it looks really cool. And you also have the ability up here in your preset menu to randomize the parameters. So if you're feeling a little stuck or not sure what to do next, randomize it, see what happens. Could be cool. So those are the new features. So now let's go to some individual tracks and see what this thing can do. Okay, so here's my first instance of the plugin, and we're using it on the main drum loop, and I'm actually using Indent 2 on this, so it's a good opportunity to show you the differences between Indent and Dent. As I said, Indent 2 is a slightly stripped down version. Here's Dent 2 here. Now Indent does not have the bias, shape, the split, upper X, lower X controls here, so you can't do the complex distortion. It also doesn't have the probability modes here, and it also doesn't have the sample rate reduction and the bit reducer. I usually use it when I just want a simpler type of setup, when I'm not interested in these other things, and I'm not on this one. I just want to give it some nice crunch, some saturation, some nice kind of vibey compression. And that's kind of what I'm doing with it. And I explored some of the different algorithms, and I landed on the new tape algorithm, which I really like a lot. So I have the input drive control here going to tape, and then I have the output driving the soft clip a little bit. And then I have the trim control here backing the whole thing down. Since I'm adding a lot of gain, I've trimmed this back in order to get relatively to unity gain. And then I'm also employing the low pass filter down to about 10K just to kind of make it a little punchier, warmer, kind of round off some of the high end harshness that might come from some of the distortion. And I'm not using any of the modulators. Again, this is a very simple but yet really effective way to use the plugin. So let's hear what it sounds like, and let's start with the bypass loop first. Okay, so that definitely needs something. Let's give it something. Here's the tape saturation with the soft clip on the output. Okay, so that has a lot more character and vibe to it. It's got a little bit of crunch, some nice compression. It's pushing up the RMS and flattening out the peak some. Really cool. That's all I did on the drum loop, but it's really, really effective what it's doing, and I don't think I could live without it on this track. So let's move on to the next track. Okay, so now I have a piano track, and the original track kind of reminded me of like a haunted piano. And so I decided to sort of take that, and make it even more like that, more crazier. And I'm using an instance of Dent 2 here, and I have the complex mode, which means that all three algorithms are happening. I'm using Glauby. Sounds really cool. I'm not sure exactly what it is.
It's a wave shaper.
Oh, thanks. Then I have the soft clip in the output I'm pushing out here a little bit. I'm not using any of the bias or split shapers, so I'm not sure if the middle algorithm is doing anything or not. Then I'm also engaging some bit reduction here, and I'm using the CRISPR algorithm, which I really like. It's a milder form of bit reduction, and it gives you that kind of attitude and gnarliness without some of the artifacts that you get with excess noise and brittleness. So I really like that. And then I'm using some cutoff filter here, a low pass filter, and a bit of resonance. And then I have the mix control dialed back a little bit here. And I'm using 3 different modulation routings. One is going to the cutoff filter from this LFO, kind of moving it back and forth a little bit. And then this LFO here is varying the sample rate a little bit, and then also the resonance. So just giving some subtle motion to the sound. I didn't think about it too much. What's really cool about this stuff is you can really just experiment. I mean, there's no rules really. You just kind of mess around until you find something you like. Obviously, if you understand the technology that's going behind it, you can actually repeat things easily. Let's check out our sound, our piano, our haunted piano. We'll try it first bypassed, and then I'll bring in the Dent 2. Here's bypassed. Engaged. Cool. So yeah, just kind of exaggerating that ghost in a haunted house playing hip hop piano vibe. And now let's move on to what you've all been waiting for, Logan's vocals. Okay, so let's get to processing some vocals. So I have 3 tracks here that are summed to background vocal bus. And then on that bus, I have two instances, one of Indent 2 and one of Dent 2. And I did that because I wanted to try some subtler saturation up front and then sort of go crazy with a more advanced patch after that. And what I'm doing is actually having the vocals come in, then go into reverb and then into the soft saturation. So it's kind of giving this very kind of vintagey vibe to it, which I liked a lot. And then after that, I'm going into Dent 2, which is doing some pretty wacky stuff. So on Indent 2 here, we're using the tape mode, which I like. That's a new mode also. So we're kind of pushing that a little bit, low pass, rolling back a little bit, giving that sort of vintage vibe flavor, and just kind of trimming it back to get back to unity gain. And that's really all I'm doing there. And then in Dent 2, I'm really kind of going crazy, exploring some new possibilities. One thing that's really cool about the new version is that you can collapse these modulators here, because once you start adding several modulators, you can see that you quickly sort of run out of space, even if you have the UI at the highest setting, which is 200%, which is what I have it at. So that's really cool. You just click on the icon here and you can go through. So I have the standard sine LFO here, and that is modulating a few different things. Then I have the step sequencer, which I just started exploring, which is also brand new. And I'm using it at ping pong, so it's only 4 steps in length here, but it's able to kind of go back and forth and do some cool things. And I'm using that to basically control the output, so it's almost acting like a tremolo, changing the velocity up and down. I'm also using that on the input as well to kind of drive it a little bit harder, so it's kind of doing this nice back and forth motion. I have a saw LFO here, which is adjusting the split point, and the split point basically takes the two halves of the signals and applies a DC bias to it, so it's kind of pulling them apart away from 0. And then I'm also changing the upper and the lower a bit here. This LFO here is also modulating the sample rate, which is this dust setting, which is pretty cool. And it's also modulating the cutoff frequency. And here, now I'm using the high pass filter, which is a new filter mode in version 2, which again gives you more sonic possibilities. So that's kind of moving that around a bit. A little bit of resonance, mix control is dialed back a bit, and then also this modulation is also varying the mix control a little bit. And then I have the probability set at 41%, which is going to cause it to not always engage the first distortion circuit, which is kind of cool. Again, it adds some subtle kind of randomization to your sound. So that's a lot going on. Again, I just kind of dove in and just like experimented and just kind of came up with something that I thought was cool. So let's check it out. Let's start with the bypass signal first, and then we'll bring in just the first instance. So here's the bypass signal first. Now I'm going to bring in the first instance of Indent 2, which is going to add that kind of subtle tape saturation vibe. Okay, and now we're going to bring in this instance of Dent 2 with all of these crazy sounds. Check it out. Very cool. So I really like what that's doing there. Some great new features in the new version here. Let's move on to another track. So this is the final segment of our demo. And we've seen a few different examples, some mild stuff, some crazier stuff. So there's a really wide gamut of sounds that you can make with this thing. And now I've decided to try something a little different. And I just took the stereo mix of the track that you've heard, and I just cut it up and used a bunch of different instances of Dent 2, as well as Unfiltered Audio's instant delay, which is awesome. They go great together, and a little bit of BX Rooms from Plugin Alliance also. And I just kind of did a little crazy breakdown, changing things up to kind of show you some different sounds it can make and just how much fun you can have with this plugin. I think one last thing that I failed to mention before is just how easy it is to assign modulation. You basically just connect an output here and drag it to an input. And so anything that has a circle on it can be modulated. And as I mentioned earlier, you can modulate the modulators. So I could actually have like this modulating back here. And then to disconnect, you just grab the end here at the end and do that. So it's really easy to set up all your modulation. So let's hear this thing that I did. Basically, like I said, just cut up a bunch of stuff, put a bunch of different tracks together. It's kind of a breakdown for this track. Maybe like a late night thing. Okay, here we go.
Give me for my sins, you know I need you, Lord.
Okay. So yeah, I was definitely spacing out on that one. It's a lot of fun. You can really just kind of get lost in all the possibilities. I really loved the old version. The new version brings some amazing new features, the multi-mode filter, I especially like, as well as the new modes. And then there's just some nice interface improvements, like being able to hide the modulators and different UI sizes and all of that. It's very CPU efficient, so you can use a lot of instances. It's really another great addition to my sonic palette. I love to dub stuff out and destroy stuff and bring it back, and this plugin is really great for that. And as we've shown, it can be subtle, it can be extreme, it can be everything in between. So that is the demo, and we will see you in the outro. So I hope you've enjoyed our demo.
I know I have.
Dent 2 and Indent 2 are available as fully functional 14-day demos on pluginalliance.com. So go ahead, download it, check it out, and make some noise.
I'm a lion, but I lost my pride. I am so defiant cause my wings don't fly. I'm angry like a giant, can't see one eye. I'm psycho with my vision, no see me.